Budapest, the capital of Hungary, lies in the heart of the country. It stretches 29 kilometers long from north to south and 25 kilometers wide from west to east, and covers an area of more than 525 square kilometers. The highest point within the territory of Budapest is János Hill, at an altitude of 529 meters. Budapest is divided by the river Danube, which flows 28 kilometers long through the city. Pest, on the eastern side of the river, has flat terrain, and Buda on the western side is more hilly. The most important islands of the Danube within the city of Budapest are the Margaret, the Chapel and the Óbudai Islands. A significant large part of the Buda Hills is under nature protection. Budapest has a population of 1.8 million people, making it the most populous city of Hungary and the 9th most populous city in the European Union. It is not only the administrative, political and economic center of the country, but also the cultural and spiritual center of the Hungarian-speaking people around the world. Speaking of public administration, Budapest is not only the capital of Hungary, but also the center of Pest County. And as a city, it has an independent self-government too, led by the Lord Mayor of Budapest, who is head of the Capital General Assembly. Budapest consists of 23 districts, each having an autonomous local administration led by the district mayor. Each district is divided into neighborhoods, many of which used to be independent settlements before the annexation to Budapest. That is why each of them has its own distinct character and special heritage. The capital is also an important transport hub. Almost every major national railway, road and motorway such as M1, M2, M3, M5, M6 and M7 starts here. The three most important railway stations are Keleti, Nyugati and Déli, each with a central location and easy access to public transport networks. Hungary's largest and most important airport, the Budapest Liszt Ferenc International Airport, lies relatively close to the city center too. The well-organized local public transport system of Budapest is operated by a single company, BKK, the Center of Budapest Transport. There are 4 underground, 35 tram, 239 bus and 15 trolleybus lines in the city, some of them available even during the night hours. The birth of Budapest as the united capital of Hungary was declared in 1873 with the unification of 3 then independent towns. the old royal capital Buda, the fast-growing Pest, and Óbuda, the medieval seat of Hungarian queens. During the upcoming 1.5 centuries, 23 further settlements got incorporated into the capital. Budapest's territory was already populated in the prehistoric times. The limestone caves of the Buda Hills were home to prehistoric peoples, and this section of the Danube used to be an important crossing zone. Later, the Celts built their fortified settlement on top of Goliath Hill. The first written records of a settlement in the area date back to the 1st century, when the province of Pannonia became part of the Roman Empire. The Danube served as a border between the empire and the neighboring territories, or as the Romans regarded it, a border between their civilized world and barbarians. Numerous military camps were established to maintain order along the river. On the territory of present-day Óbuda, the Romans founded the city of Aquincum, which became the capital of the province Pannonia Inferior. Remains of Roman architecture, such as the amphitheater, roads and ruins of private and public buildings are still visible in some parts of Óbuda. To protect the other side of the border, another Roman town, Contra Aquincum, was established on the territory of today's Pest, near the Elizabeth Bridge. After the fall of the Roman Empire, centuries of migration, and the reigns of the Hunnic and Frankish empires, the Hungarian tribes arrived in the late 9th century in the area of what is now Budapest. Grand Duke Árpád, the leader of the alliance of 7 conquering Hungarian tribes, chose this region to be his realm, as, according to tradition, the palace of the great king Attila the Hun had once stood here. Thanks to their central location, Pest and Óbuda started to develop rapidly. After the Mongol invasion of Hungary in 1241–1242, King Béla IV ordered a new fortified city to be built on the top of the plateau that is the castle hill today. This was the foundation of Buda, which over the upcoming centuries became the seat of the kings of Hungary. The golden age of Buda Castle and the royal palace is connected to 3 prominent rulers: King Sigismund of Luxembourg, King Charles I of Anjou, and King Matthias Corvinus, the third having made Buda the center of a humanist Renaissance royal court. The golden age of Buda was followed by decades of conflicts, destruction, and almost 150 years of occupation. After the fall of the medieval Kingdom of Hungary at the battlefield of Mohács in 1526, the central territories including Buda, Pest and Óbuda became part of the Ottoman Empire. Buda fell on the 29th August 1541 and became the seat of the regional Turkish administration. Churches were transformed into mosques, and at the same time many hammams, traditional Turkish baths, were opened upon the healing springs of the limestone hills. Buda was finally liberated by a united Christian army led by Charles V, the Duke of Lorraine, on the 2nd September 1686. During the reign of the Habsburg dynasty, the emperors of Austria were, in most of cases, kings of Hungary as well. The royal court moved to Vienna, and as a legacy of the Turkish occupation, Buda was no longer the center of Hungarian administration, since Pozsony, today Bratislava, Slovakia, became the capital and the city of coronations, because it was close enough to Vienna to be well controlled. After some important construction work and the renovation of the royal palace, Buda became the seat of the regional authorities of the Palatine, who was to govern the country on behalf of the king. In the 19th century, Pest became a fascinating center of a Hungarian reform movement and nationalism, while Buda was a sleepy old royal city, a symbol of oppression. These were also times of economic and civic development. The Hungarian Academy of Sciences and a series of other new institutions were established. The construction of the first permanent stone bridge over the Danube was initiated and promoted by Count István Széchenyi. The bridge was designed by the English engineer William Tierney Clark. The bridge was opened in 1849. The 1848 revolution was started in Pest by young intellectuals and turned into a mass protest on the 15th March. Several major reforms were demanded, including more independence for the country and the shift of the Hungarian parliament from Pozsony to the twin cities of Pest-Buda. After the fall of the War of Independence, further development in the cities was overshadowed by decades of tyranny, yet they managed to grow and develop at a fast pace. After the compromise between Austria and Hungary and the establishment of the dual monarchy of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the idea and need for a unified Budapest became stronger, which finally happened in 1873. The newly born Budapest became one of the most modern and beautiful cities of the world, an industrial as well as a cultural center, attracting crowds from all over the Kingdom of Hungary, keen on starting a new life in the city. Around the turn of the 20th century, Budapest was one of the most populous cities on the globe. Most of its landmarks, such as the Houses of Parliament, the Opera, the Basilica, the renewed Royal Palace, and the Matthias Church with the Fisherman's Bastion. Theatres, cafes were built during this golden era of Budapest. Also its special character and cityscape, the boulevards, avenues, and its magnificent squares are products of this unprecedentedly massive and rich development. An especially important year for Hungarians was 1896, when the millennium, the 1000th anniversary of the Magyar conquest of the Carpathian Basin, was celebrated, culminating with the monumental millennial exhibition and inducing major urban improvements. Besides newly erected buildings and statues, the city's first, also the world's second, underground railway was opened, connecting the city center with the city park. The Great War put an end to the Golden Age. Hungary was made a much smaller country by the Treaty of Trianon, but Budapest, with all of its imperial grandeur, remained the capital of Hungary. The city witnessed a series of changes on the political chessboard. The declaration of the First Republic was soon to be followed by a socialist revolution and a short-lived communist regime, which was eventually eliminated with the restoration of the kingdom. During the interwar period, Budapest made her way back to development, but the progress was abruptly stopped by the outbreak of the Second World War. As an ally of the German Reich, Hungary lost the war. Budapest and its population suffered a lot. During the siege of the capital, all of the bridges and most of the buildings were destroyed. The so-called liberation by the Soviet Red Army, on the one hand, was the beginning of another dark chapter in the history of the nation. But on the other hand, during the post-war years, the country started to rebuild from its ashes. As the 1956 revolution started here, Budapest turned into a battlefield once again. The revolution escalated into a heroic war for freedom, but ended with another Soviet invasion and dreadful revenge shortly after. The following decades brought the nation a softer, but still oppressive communist dictatorship, slowly opening towards the West, and a relatively good quality of life compared to other satellite states behind the Iron Curtain. Thanks to the changes in 1989-1990, Budapest, as the capital of the Democratic Republic of Hungary, is one of the most important economic and cultural centers of Central Europe once again. Moreover, it has a reputation as a top tourist destination, a place of national and world heritage, diversity, and amazing local spirit.